So far in this course, you've learned about a few types of variables. Integers, which represent whole numbers like 1 and 2 and 3. Doubles, which represent decimal numbers like 3.14. And strings, which represent text like, "Hi there." In this exercise, you'll learn about another type in Swift, Booleans. So Booleans, or bools for short, can only have two possible values, true or false. You might not realize it, but you've already used Booleans if you built the Bullseye app. You'll see what I mean before the end of this video. Now let's try using Booleans in Swift.
So let's start off by creating two Boolean constants. We'll name the first one yes, and we'll set it to true. Note here that it looks like I'm assigning a string value, but true is a special term known as a reserved keyword in Swift that means what it says. It simply represents something that is true. So name the second one no and set it to false. False, again, is a reserved keyword in Swift. Like the other Swift types you've learned about, you can use type inference instead of declaring the type. If the value is just true or false, the compiler will know it's a Boolean. So you can see the results on the right stay the same. And if you option click, you can see that this is definitely still a bool. That's an example of setting a Boolean value directly. But you can also define Booleans using expressions.
So think back to when you were working on the Bullseye app, where you wrote the code to calculate the difference between the slider value and the target value. You wrote an if statement that said if difference is equal to 0. The part that says difference equal to 0 is what's known as an expression. Now you can think of an expression as a unit of code that resolves to a single value. In this case, the expression either resolves to true or false. So either the difference is exactly equal to 0, which means it's true, or the difference is not equal to 0, which means the expression is false. So effectively, the result of the difference equal to 0 expression is a temporary Boolean value. So if that expression evaluates to true, the part inside the if statement will execute. But if it evaluates to false, then the part inside the if statement won't execute.
To see this in action, you'll set up a simple scenario with some students who have different grades, and you'll set up some Boolean variables depending on who passed and who failed. So first, let's set up a constant. We'll name it passing grade and set it to 50. Next, create another constant, name it student grade, and set it to, say, 74. Now, how can you determine if the student has passed using Booleans? Now, just as you did in the Bullseye app with other values, you can compare those two values to see if they are greater than or less than each other. In this case, if a student's mark is greater than the passing grade, then we consider that they've passed. So let's set up an expression to represent that. We'll create another constant, we'll name it student passed, and we'll set its value to student grade is greater than passing grade. So Xcode tells you in the sidebar that, yes, the student passed, since 74 is greater than 50. So it sets the value of student passed to true. You can also test the reverse situation to see if the student failed. So that is, if the student's grade is less than the passing grade. So create another constant, name it student failed, and set its value to student grade less than passing grade. And there you see the value of student failed is false, which means no, this student didn't fail. But there's a small narrow case here that you haven't covered. What if the student gets exactly 50? So go back up to where you declared the constants and comment out the one where you set the student grade to 74. Below that, redeclare the constant and set it to 50. Okay, now take a look now at your two constants, student passed and student failed. They're both false. Well, that can't be right. So what you haven't taken into account is what happens when the student grade is exactly equal to the passing grade. So in English, to determine if someone passed, you'd say, if student grade is more than or equal to the passing grade, and Swift provides an operator just for that. So comment out the line where we compare if student grade is greater than passing grade, and replace it with a slightly different line where we declare a constant student passed and set its value to student grade is greater than or equal to passing grade. Oh, there you go. Now, if the student squeaks by with a 50, they still pass. Good for them. There's also an operator for less than or equal to, and you can use them wherever you want. Now, you can also simply compare whether something is equal or not. Let's take the case of Sam and Chris, our two shiny new students, and we'll give them each a grade. Declare the constant Chris grade and give Chris a 49. And declare another constant and give our star student, Sam, a 99. So you've probably been used to thinking of the equal sign as this. But in Swift, like many other languages, that's used to assign values, which is why I've tried not to say things like Chris grade equals 99 in this course. It's actually known as the assignment operator in programming, not the equal sign. To see if two things are equal in Swift, you use the equality operator instead, which is two equal signs together. So let's see this in action. Is Sam grade equal to Chris grade? No, of course they're not. Swift looks at the two values on either side of the equality operator, decides they're not equivalent, and returns false in this case. Now, what if you wanted to check whether two things are not equal or unequal? Swift has an operator for that as well, unsurprisingly called the inequality operator, which is an exclamation mark followed by an equal sign. So let's check if Sam grade is not equal to Chris grade. And yes, of course, they aren't equal. It's good to get in the habit of reading this as not equal to, since, as you'll see in later videos, the exclamation mark actually has another use where you'll read it as not. Now, Swift can also compare things besides numbers, including strings. So let's declare two constants, cat name, which takes the value of Ozma, and dog name, which takes the value of Mango. You can use those same equality and inequality operators on strings. Is cat name equal to dog name? No, they're not the same. Swift compares the contents of each string to see if they're the same or different. And in this case, they're different. Now, what about those greater than or less than operators? Yeah, you can use those on strings too. So here's an example. Check if cat name is greater than dog name. When comparing strings with less than or greater than operators, Swift checks, does this string come before or after another string? In this case, Ozma comes after Mango, alphabetically speaking, so this statement is true. Ozma is greater than Mango.
Comparison operators are something you'll use throughout your programming career, so it's a good idea to understand them really well. And to that end, I've got a round of challenges for you, where you can practice using Booleans and comparison operators.